workshop. My name is Josh Arguelles. I'm familiar with a couple of you, at least by name. I'm here in Human Resources, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the WellCats program and some of the stuff that we got going on. If you're unfamiliar with WellCats, one of the services that we offer, obviously, is this educational series that you're attending right now. They cover a wide variety of different topics for wellness, including financial, outdoor safety, like we got today. We've got some other things coming down the road. I think the fun with exercise with fitness is our next one in July. We also offer hands-on cooking classes in the Family Consumer Sciences building in the food labs they have over there, FCS 187, if you're interested. We have another 2 sessions coming up in July. And those are led by our nutrition department, Maggie Farrell, who did a great job on Friday with those sessions. And if you're interested, the recipes are on Teams. So make sure to check back over there. We have one-on-one nutrition consultations, again, partnering with nutrition department. If you want to make an appointment for the nutrition consultation, all you need to do is send me an email at worklife@txstate.edu, and I will put you in touch with Maggie and her crew, and they'll get you set up with an appointment. Along the same vein as the appointments, we have the health behavior change coaching. Again, contact me. That's with Dr. Janet Besner. She's a licensed health and wellness coach to lead those one-on-one services for you. We also have a schedule for our group exercise classes, including classes like kickboxing, boot camps. We have step. We have a lifting class at the Jowers weight room, and Zumba and yoga classes. We've got, most of them are in Jowers, either in gym 219 upstairs or B105, the yoga studio, or Jowers 118, the weight room. If you're confused in that, send me an email. I'll answer the questions. Jowers is a very puzzling building, and I've been here for a while, and I should have figured it out by now. But, you know, I get lost in JCK sometimes. So it's just a square. Finally, I do want to mention that we partner with Campus Rec for the Student Recreation Center. WellCats has a limited number of subsidies, $25 subsidies that you have available to you to purchase a membership at the Student Rec Center. So if you get a semester membership, it's normally $105. Add that take that $25 off, it would be $80 for the semester, and you get access to all the stuff in the Student Recreation Center. It's a great facility. It's very well kept, and I am planning to return eventually. I just don't know. I like working out at home, but you know, Jowers. Student Rec Center is awesome. Finally, I will add, this is not a WellCats plug, but HR is developing the Bobcat Buddies program. It's essentially seasoned employees who have at least a year working here at Texas State become buddies for new hires. And over a course of 90 days, they kind of ease people into the life on campus. They introduce them to events, whether it be virtual or in person. They introduce them to new people, show them, and introduce them to things around campus so they become more familiar and enjoy life here at Texas State. If you're interested in that, you can email HR, and I'll even get, I can ask Sam, or I'll post a link in the chat for the interest survey that we have set up for that. So with all that said, I'll hand you off to Bob Riddle for today's presentation.
Perfect. Thanks, Josh. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. So good afternoon, y'all. Sorry, I'm looking at both screens here. I might have to be looking over this way. It's because I just have some notes. So I'm Bob. I am the coordinator for outdoor recreation here at Campus Rec. So a little bit about me. Still kind of new to Texas. So Josh, I'm definitely interested in that Bobcat Buddies program. I will be here in Texas 1 year in about like 8-9 days. So this is really exciting for me. Though I'm new to Texas, I do have a lot of experience kind of dealing with being in the heat outside. So for 11-12 years now, I've been leading outdoor summer programming at multiple universities, stretching back to when I was an incoming freshman at West Virginia University. And so I do have some experience with this. I'm also a wilderness first responder, which is one step below a wilderness EMT, which is actually a step above a regular EMT. I have some like kind of knowledge and experience to help provide with what to do in certain circumstances, whether you're here in San Marcos or floating down the river a lot more remote, or just, kind of in your backyard at home. So we'll probably do questions here towards the end, but, write those down. If you absolutely need to stop, or so you don't forget, just, throw a hand up in the chat or write your question in the chat so you don't forget, and we'll go from there. So some of the stuff we're going to look at here this afternoon, we're going to look at what's really the difference between heat exhaustion versus heat stroke. We're going to talk a little bit about how hydration and nutrition play a role in that. Talk about the ideal locations and times to exercise. And a big step that we're really going to hit on today is really planning ahead and preparing, trying to help prevent these things from happening. And then I'm going to give a little shameless plug about what we can do in campus recreation to help you enjoy being outside, especially at this time of the year, a little bit more, so you can kind of take some of that thinking and planning out of it. So signs and symptoms of exhaustion and heat stroke. You're going to notice a pretty big difference in these. Exhaustion, you're going to often feel maybe more pale, cool, or clammy. Versus heat stroke, the skin is really going to be red, hot, and dry. A lot of people have heard kind of the old saying, like, you stop sweating. It really is true. When people stop sweating, that is a major sign and symptom that someone is moving past heat exhaustion and moving into heat stroke. That should be your immediate clue to like go ahead and call 911. Other signs and symptoms, someone who's in heat exhaustion is going to start to feel a lot more nauseous, kind of sick to their stomach, like they want to throw up. Maybe having stomach cramps or other muscle cramps, especially like calves if they've been walking a lot outside, and feel dizzy. The big problem when we notice we're starting to move into that heat stroke, they will become extremely disoriented. They may become combative, really confused. They may not seem like themselves. That's another like red flag, especially here in San Marcos and in Texas, to call 911 immediately to try and help start that process to get them cooled down. And then headaches, being thirsty. Someone may have possible seizures as well if they're in heat stroke. So kind of the things that we want to do, which we'll move into that next slide, but the automatic first thing we want to do, if we start to notice these signs over here for heat stroke, that's like immediately you should go ahead and call 911, whether you're in town or more remote or at your home, because we need to start aggressively cooling that person. Another thing I'll mention is heat stroke. They will have a high heart rate at rest. Heat stroke, you're basically seeing a symptom of volume shock. And your body is trying to make up for that loss of water. That's why you're no longer sweating and why that body temperature is rising. So that's why you're going to notice a high heart rate in an individual as they're moving into heat stroke. So let's talk about treatment. Exhaustion. This is great. You do not need to call 911 for someone who's kind of got those signs and symptoms of exhaustion. What you're going to want to do is try to get them cooled down. So getting them in a shady area. Even better, if you can get them indoors in air conditioning, do that instead. Other things you're going to do is kind of replace fluids and salt or electrolytes. So trying to get them to drink 1 to 2 liters of water is a really good thing. For reference, a liter of water is like a big bottle like this, or kind of like a Nalgene, if you're familiar with that. So probably, at least 2 like regular 16-ounce cups if you can. And then if you've got cold water and you can get a towel or a cool compress, or even if you have ice to give them, just trying to help them cool down, especially the head with this. Because what a lot of the problem is, as we start to move into heat stroke, is a body temperature rising above 104 degrees. At 104 degrees, that's where we start to see the signs and symptoms of the brain shutting down and having these issues. So being able to put cold towel around the neck and the head, providing ice, soaking a hat in cool water and putting that on, those are all things that are going to help kind of alleviate and cool down the body much quicker. I've already hit on this heat stroke. Call 911 immediately and start aggressively cooling this person. That means, like, if you have access to get indoors and air conditioning, absolutely. If even better, if you're near a place that has ice, being able to get bags of ice or put ice around this person is something that you're going to want to immediately do. Now, that's why I also said call 911 immediately, because they're going to do these exact same things at a hospital. If this person is conscious, try to get them to drink water, because if we can replenish those fluids in their system, they may be able to start sweating again and helping cool down on their own, especially if you catch those signs and symptoms early enough. So what to wear? Things that are going to help you from like avoiding heat exhaustion, heat stroke, and just feeling more comfortable outdoors, recreating outside or just being outside this time of the year. One is sunscreen, making sure that you're taking care of your skin. We're probably pretty aware that skin cancer is something really easy that a lot of people can get, especially from UV rays. The other thing is, like, if you get a really aggressive, bad sunburn, your body is losing moisture and it's harder to cool down, which can actually lead to a much more likelihood of going into heat exhaustion or heat stroke. Now, if you're like me and you hate having like lots of oils and stuff all over your skin, or just simply bad at carrying sunscreen with you, something that can be really good is wearing long sleeves. I will actually wear long sleeves out when I go to the river. You know, you can go to Academy Sports and get like really light colored long sleeve, lightweight synthetic long sleeves. And then you soak those with water and you feel cool like most of the day, which is really nice. And then you don't have to worry as much about applying sunscreen. Versus like if you're going to wear short sleeves, that's kind of a choice you need to make. And then being mindful of yourself to wear sunscreen if not. Cotton versus synthetic. So especially in the outdoors, a lot of people are like, don't wear cotton. And a lot of the reason that is true in certain circumstances is because cotton fibers are like a giant macaroni noodle. They absorb moisture. And so if you're staying outside overnight and you're sweating during the day, or if you're somewhere in the mountains where it's much cooler in winter, cotton would be bad because you may get way colder and lead to hypothermia, versus cotton this time of the year, because it does hold on and retain the moisture, can be a really good thing for us, especially in the Texas heat, because we can stay cooler longer and keep reapplying water to that. Synthetic is still also great this time of the year. However, the moisture is going to wick away much quicker. So if you know you're going to be outside a long portion of the day and are trying to keep that moisture on you to stay cool, cotton might be a little bit better of a choice for you. Another thing with kind of like clothing in regards to that is having clothing that is kind of loose, and not having a whole lot of clothing with that to provide. Sunglasses are great as well. Just simply like UV rays can also affect your eyes. There is this kind of like, especially if you're on the water a lot, water will reflect off, the light will reflect off the water and bounce back up, even if you're still wearing a hat. And it can lead to an effect called snow blindness that actually occurs a lot with skiers or snowboarders. The same thing can happen right here in Texas, especially with like large bodies of waters like lakes or some of the rivers that we have, especially like the Blanco River out at University Camp. So sunglasses are another really important thing to wear to take care of yourself. And then a hat. So being able to have a large brim hat as well is something that can help reduce kind of that glare that comes in from the sun. And you can also soak that, keeping your head cool in the water as well. So some of the tips and tricks to stay cool. Staying hydrated is a really big one. So we already talked about being able to drink water, especially if you know you're in heat exhaustion. But drinking water throughout the day, especially before, during, and after outdoor activity is really good. It's kind of recommended if you can drink 16 ounces of water, so standard kind of like cup to 2 cups before doing an activity, and then having a bottle of water with you during the activity is a great way. We talked a little bit about using those cool damp towels. So if you're going to be outside, having a towel, if you got a cooler and you can put in the back of a vehicle and have some ice and have some towels kind of soaking in that cool water, if you know that you're traveling that day, it's another great kind of life hack to keep you cool outside. And then conditioning to the heat. So that's something that is honestly really real. I grew up without air conditioning in Southern Ohio, where it would often get up to 95 to 100 degrees in August, and worked and grew up on a farm. And so like moving here and being a new Texan, like it's actually been kind of nice because we have the heat, but we don't have the humidity there necessarily growing up where I did. But like if you can slowly start to condition yourself to the heat, it'll make it so your body gets more used to it, versus if you're more used to sitting in an office or at home in air conditioning, you know, starting with maybe 15 minutes a day of being out kind of in the heat, then moving up to 20 to 30 to the point where you can handle the heat for however long you want to enjoy being outside for. You know, I'm at the point with some of the jobs that we do, we're outside 8 to sometimes 16 hours a day, and just so you can work your body up to that. Another thing to avoid is alcohol and caffeine, primarily because those are diuretics and they dehydrate you. And that's one of the biggest things we talked about that leads to heat exhaustion and heat stroke, is not having enough fluids in your system. And then if you can keep shade nearby, keep water nearby. I know me and Andrew, who's pictured here, he's my supervisor, we'll some days go for midday runs right around lunch. And we love to run the trail or walk the trail right here beside the San Marcos River between Sewell Park and Rio Vista, because it has a lot of shade. But also if we were to get hot, we know that we can get right down in the water, cool off, and then keep going. So hydration and nutrition, we've hit on that, plays a pretty good role. We talked about that early and often. The other thing is making sure you have electrolytes. So electrolytes include really sodium, potassium, calcium. Those are all good things to have in your diet. So, you know, eating salty foods like nuts, some chips, having fruit with potassium, drinking milk, all those things with calcium. Those things help retain moisture, especially in your body, which helps you hold on to that sweat, those fluids a lot longer and not release them as quickly. So people often will get electrolytes in sports drinks, which is great, but you also don't need to have something that's so sugary all the time. So really eating just a well-balanced diet is a great way to get electrolytes in your system effectively and efficiently. Most people consume 2,000 to 2,500 calories a day for normal activity, and then adjust based off how strenuous that is. So kind of feeling yourself out and knowing your own body and making sure you yourself are eating enough. And so if you're planning to be outside during the day in the heat, you know, it's kind of recommended, try to get about 60% of your calories from carbs, 10% from fat, and about 30% from protein. So hyponatremia is something that we do want to avoid. And it's actually where you consume a lot of water, but you don't consume any electrolytes. There was some cases several years ago, I believe it was around football players growing up, that actually kind of like drowned on land. It was because they were consuming, their parents were having them drink so much water at practice. But there was nowhere else for that water to go, and it basically filled up in their system, and they kind of like dry drowned because they drank so much water. And so it's important, like you don't need to overhydrate yourself to the point where you're like feeling nauseated and sick. Your body can only retain so much water at a time and absorb it into your system. So that's why really those electrolytes and that healthy diet really helps you out a lot with that. So listen to your body. And as you can see there on the right, good case in point for us who work in the outdoors is kind of a way to monitor is looking at your own urine. So well hydrated should be really clear. And if you're starting to see like a brownish yellow, you're very dehydrated and you should definitely drink some more water pretty quickly. So ideal locations and times to exercise. We talked about, especially in Texas, if you can be near a body of water, which we're so fortunate to have the San Marcos River. We have the Blanco River in the area out at University Camp, as well as all the other, the Guadalupe, the Camal. If you're ever up all the creeks up near Austin, like Onion Creek, there's so many great resources in this area of Texas. If you can try to be near those, that's awesome. Now, I personally know how frustrating it can be also on the weekends with a lot of people visiting here that may not be from San Marcos, and you may not want to be around large crowds of people. So if you can try to plan that to be around water during the week when there's less people around bodies of water, or like University Camp, we cap it so there's not very many people out there. So if you like your privacy a little bit more, that's something you can plan for. Places with lots of shade. One of the other big things is trying to really avoid the middle of the day, especially if you're not used to it and not conditioned to be out between really 1 p.m. to 6 p.m., which is typically the hottest part of the day. So really trying to shoot for early mornings or late evenings once our air temperature starts to cool down. So, you know, usually they say if it's 90 degrees out and 70% humidity, you really need to start considering your options if you should wait or get up a little bit early to work out. The other thing, though, is if you're working out early morning or late evening, kind of as it's getting darker, there are some wildlife considerations. You know, there may be less snakes in the morning and the evening because it's cooler and they're not sunning themselves. But you may be more likely to run into some deer wherever you are, just something to be aware of. But definitely during the daytime, if you are choosing to work out 1 to 6 p.m., that's probably when you're going to be more likely to run into those snakes and stuff. I've definitely been on the trail here between Sewell Park and Rio Vista and have run into several poisonous snakes before, and it's nothing to scare you, it's just to make you aware of. So planning ahead and preparing. One thing I like to do is figure out what I'm going to do. So if I'm running outside or having a lot of cardio that's going to be really intensive, have a route, have what you plan to do or pace. For you all, it may not be running outside. It may be like going out and planting the garden or digging around with that. It may be going out and playing with family members or having a picnic. You know, when I say the activity, consider just like the level of intensity that you're going to be outside for. Checking the forecast is also really important. So like know what the temperature is going to be, know what it's going to feel like outside will help you prepare. It's also good because sometimes we may get rain. Hopefully we don't have lightning and you're exercising outside, but if you know it's going to rain, that might be a great time to work out outside because you're going to constantly have shade. You're going to have that moisture around. Honestly, it'd feel good this time of the year. So that's something to consider. I like to use the buddy system when I'm outside recreating, especially in the summer and especially in this heat. Having someone else with me, just in case something happens to me, I know there's someone there who can at least call for help. However, I will often do things solo as well. If I'm doing something solo, one thing I like to really do is tell someone where I'm going, when I expect to be back, and where my planned route is. Because if they haven't heard back from me by that point, then they should start to be maybe a little bit concerned, and they can either go look for me or call someone for help. And having that route should give people an idea of where I'm going to be at if something were to happen to me. So having just those backup systems in place, just in case something doesn't go as planned. We talked about clothing earlier. One thing I like to do is lay out my clothing ahead of time and be intentional of like, am I going to wear long sleeves, shorts, or am I going to wear like long synthetic leggings to help keep the sun off me, depending on the time of the year, or how much sunscreen I'm going to need. and then reminding myself to hydrate before, during, and after, and just eat good. One thing I've also noted just through this is like a lot of red meat actually takes a long time to break down and digest, especially if you're eating right before you work out this time of the day. And one thing that can happen with red meat is it will actually raise the body temperature more per unit than other foods like carbs and fats. So you may want to actually avoid eating red meat or a lot of red meat before you go work out, especially if it's 100+ degrees. So just to talk about it a little bit, there are some things that we can do for you. So with Campus Rec, especially outdoor recreation that me and Andrew work with, we have our adventure trips program. So with that, these programs are not just for students. The adventure trips program, as a faculty and staff member, you can participate in this. So we lead trips locally, especially this time of the year. We provide moonlight paddles where we kayak on full moon nights. And we run that pretty much throughout the year, except for the winter. But during the summer, we also provide our glow paddles. So kind of like how Paddle SMTX does, this is a special opportunity only for Texas State students, faculty, and staff. We actually set up paddle boards and we put glow lights underneath of them and kind of see the San Marcos River in a new and interesting way with no people out there. It's cool, and really avoid that sun. And that's led by our trip leaders that are all trained and help guide and show you how to use all the gear as well. We have our outdoor center here in Sewell Park. So you can all come as faculty and staff and you can rent anything from basketballs to hammocks if you just want to hang out in the park. We sell cold drinks here as well if you're planning a trip to the park on your own. You can also rent kayaks, stand-up paddle boards, and tubes for us if you're looking for a leisurely day. Especially if you have family and you want to introduce them to it as a faculty staff member with your staff ID. You can reserve up to 2 boats or up to 6 tubes. So you could actually bring, a significant group if you wanted to bring them out here and go tubing all the way down the Rio Vista. University Camp, which you can see in those 2 pictures on the right, is our 126-acre property out in Wimberley. It's about a 25-minute drive from campus. That is totally reservable. And, I would say max people out there in a day is probably going to be 40. And so we have 9 campsites, which I wouldn't recommend staying at in the summer. We have 4 day use sites for picnicking. And then we have 2 lodges, which do feature air conditioning, bunk beds, lounge area, as well as refrigerator, stoves, and microwaves. So if you're ever wanting to do a retreat or stay out there with your family, that is something that only Texas State students, faculty, staff, and alumni can use. We have our climbing center inside the Student Recreation Center. If you're really wanting to kind of like push the physical limits and try something new, that's something always provided. And then of course, the Student Recreation Center in general, like between the hours of 1 and 6, is a great alternative if you don't want to recreate or stay inside, if you don't want to stay outside when it's so hot. So with that, I'll open it up to questions. Would love to hear if you have any ideas or would like any advice that I can answer and provide, and I'll stop sharing now.
I know I'm not like a participant, I didn't sign up for this, but is there like a link that we can share for the travel, the trips and the paddle boarding and stuff? Is that on the Campus Rec website?
Yeah, absolutely. I can actually post that in the chat if you give me 2 seconds. I will pull that up and share it with y'all. And I'll send you, I'll just send you the Campus Rec website, but I'll send you some specific ones for our trips program and then the university camp.
So on the topic of heat stroke and heat exhaustion, are those symptoms, is that going to be like it's slowly building up and you can tell, like obviously tell, or is that just going to hit you all at once?
It honestly, it could vary. People react very differently. Heat exhaustion will typically, I think a lot of it has to do with conditioning and how used you are. If you're more moderately conditioned, you're going to notice heat exhaustion happen way slower. I would say if you live a pretty sedentary lifestyle and you're used to being inside all the time and go out, you know, like 2 weeks ago when it was 105, you're going to witness it a lot quicker in someone. And then I would say from heat exhaustion to heat stroke, if there's not an intervention to try and help cool that person down or get them fluids, you will see that happen quick in anyone.
I think there was a question in chat. Can they reserve the boards for like their wellness time?
Yes, actually you can. I talked to Andrew about this. So if you're planning to use your wellness time during the day, you can actually call the outdoor recreation center and tell them you're coming over. To be honest, we hardly ever run out of paddle boards or kayaks or tubes unless there's a large pre-planned event. Like the example I would give is like cat camp comes in tubes on the day that they come. But for paddle boards and kayaks during the week, during the day, we hardly ever run out. But if you want to, I'm going to give you all the phone number in the chat to the outdoor center. If you ever call that number, give them like 15-minute heads up. They can go ahead and pull the board for you. You can give them their net ID and they can have it already set up. And then you can just show up, make payment, and you're good to go. Any other questions? For family members, welcome on adventure trips. So yes, you are allowed to bring one person who is kind of a family member on the trip. We definitely have had like people who are students bring like a spouse with them. But we do kind of limit it to one person. It would be at a higher cost, but it's not an excessively higher cost. So yes, you can bring a family member with you on the trips. Cool. Well, unless you have anything else, Josh, I think that wraps it up for me.
I think we are all good here. Thank you so much, Bob.